Amateur Radio News and Notes for Friday, August 8th, 2025. I'm Ed Kabik, November 2, Echo Charlie. It's good to be back. And in the log this week, we'll be talking about a contest spotlight, the Worked All Europe DX contest. Also, check in with MVARC in the park, Kilo United 8 Victor and Kilo November 4 X-Ray Whiskey activated some POTA in DC. We'll also look at another local contest, this time a Maryland DC QSO party. Talk about MVARC Nets on the air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about some upcoming contests, and also look into some interesting online radio content. This weekend brings the Worked All Europe, or WAE DX contest on CW. Only intercontinental DX counts, so the European DX will be eagerly answering your calls. The fun starts at 0 UTC on August 9th, so that's 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time tonight, until 23:59 UTC on August 10th, or 7:59 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. On CW, on the 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10-meter bands. Operating classes include single op, who are limited to 36 hours of total operation, and multi-ops, who can work all 48 hours. The exchange is RST plus serial number, and stations can be worked once per band. This can be a great way to get some DX from Europe in the log. There is an interesting twist in this contest that you should know about, and that is QTC traffic. QTCs are a way to get additional points by sending additional information back to a European station. The QTC must include a time, a call sign, and a serial number of the reported QSO. In the rules, they give an example of a QTC as 1307 DA1AA 431, which would mean that DA1AA was worked at 1307 UTC and was sent serial number 431. Each QSO can only be recorded once and not back to the original station, and when correctly transferred, it gives 1 point to the sender and 1 point to the receiver. Up to 10 QTCs can be sent maximum, and it can be done via several contacts with the same individual. They can be sent via a series, so if you're going to send 5 and you're on your third one, you would send 3 of 5 for the QTC. This is somewhat unique in contests, and if someone asks to send you a QTC and you don't want to, you can just say no. But it is a challenging way to get some extra points in the mix. Multipliers in the contest are the number of countries defined in the WAE country list. To see the rules for that, worked per band. And for the European stations, every non-European DXCC entity is a multiplier, with some exceptions laid out in the rules. There's also a multiplier bonus for a band weighting. 80-meter countries get multiplied by 4, 40-meter countries get multiplied by 3, and 20, 15, and 10-meter bands get multiplied by 2. Final scoring is the number of QSOs plus QTCs on all bands multiplied by the sum of all multipliers, weighted by the band factor. There's a lot going on in this contest, so definitely peruse the DARC site for the rules and additional details. There is a link in the show notes. Have fun and good luck. On Thursday, August 7th, 2025, MVARC members Larry, KN4XW, and David, Kilo United 8 Victor, activated parks for POTA in Washington, D.C. They worked on several bands on single-side band as a dual operator activation on an absolutely beautiful day. Your author swung by on the way home from work to see them in action, and they were fielding a steady pileup on 40 meters on an absolutely gorgeous evening. If you have fun activities you'd like to share with Amateur Radio News and Notes, drop me a line and I may include it in a future edition. And now let's spotlight another contest, in this case the Maryland DC QSO Party. This weekend brings the 2025 edition of the Maryland DC QSO Party, and the action starts at 1400 UTC on August 9th. That is 10 a.m. on Saturday, Eastern Daylight Time, and it goes until 4 UTC, or August 10th, or midnight Eastern Daylight Time on Saturday. The bands in play, 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters on CW and phone, with 5 classes, including club, rover, portable, mobile, and fixed, and 3 power classes, high power being greater than 100 watts, low power at 100 watts, and QRP being 5 watts. The exchange is county and city for Maryland and DC stations, and state, province, or country for everybody else. Points are 3 per CW QSO, 1 per phone QSO, 50 bonus points for working W3 VPR, 200 points for working 13 of the 25 Maryland, D.C. jurisdictions, and 500 points if you work all 25 jurisdictions. The multipliers for MDC participants are each Maryland County, D.C., and Baltimore City once only, and each state except Maryland, province, or country once only. For non-MDC participants, the multipliers are each Maryland County, D.C., and Baltimore City once only. This total score is QSO points times power multiplier times category multiplier times county, state, province, country multiplier. That whole quantity plus bonus points. So things can escalate quickly. Full rules and details can be found on the link in the show notes. Good luck. And now let's talk about some MVARC Nets on the air. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m., we have our 2-meter FM net on the club repeater. That is immediately followed on the same frequency by the 2-meter digital net, which is on Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM. On Saturdays and Sundays, we have the MVARC Slow Speed CW Roundtable at 7:30 a.m. on 3.565 megahertz CW, where we will slow down to whatever speed you're comfortable, usually about 12 to 15 words a minute CW, and that is followed every Saturday and Sunday by the MVARC Cherry Tree Net on Saturday and Sunday at 8:30 a.m. on 3.920 megahertz lower sideband, where we always have a great conversation, and you are always welcome. And now let's talk about what is happening with DX. As usual, there will be a good amount of DX on the bands this week, including Bermuda, St. Kitts Island, Mayotte, South Sudan, Tarawa Kiribati, Kuwait, and Antarctica. A calendar of DX expeditions, as always, can be found at dxnews.com/calendar. And now it's time for a solar activity update as we go to press. The Solar Flux Index, or SFI, was 152, and the estimated sunspot number was 140, with 9 numbered sunspot regions visible from Earth. Over the last week, the SFI stayed about the same, and solar activity has been at moderate levels recently. The geomagnetic field is at quiet levels, and the KP index reached 1 yesterday. The solar wind peaked at 476 kilometers per second. There were R1 radio blackouts recently, with the largest being yesterday at 11:31 UTC. And solar activity is predicted to be at moderate levels here today and Saturday. Geomagnetic fields are expected to be enhanced today and tomorrow with the arrival of coronal mass ejection at Earth and a co-rotating interacting region ahead of a coronal hole high-speed stream. The chance of solar radiation storms of the S1 or greater level is low at 15% today and 5% over the weekend. R1 to R2 radio blackouts are likely in the near term, with a predicted probability of 55%. R3 or greater blackouts are less likely, with a 10% chance predicted. And there is a chance of 6-meter propagation, so keep an eye on the band and spotting clusters to be ready for the next time the Magic Band does its thing. HF conditions have been favorable overall, and it remains a fantastic time for amateurs to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see delay or absorption data and associated radio blackouts, check out NOAA's DRAP page. And to see real-time maximum usable frequency, MUF, and critical frequency FOF2 information from Radioson data, visit prop.kc2g.com. Now let's talk about some upcoming contests. We kind of already did that, didn't we? On the contest calendar this weekend, we will see that WAEDX contest on CW we mentioned. Also, there's going to be the 5th Saturday Sprint, the SKCC Weekend Sprintathon, and the YB Bekasi Merdeka contest. Also, that Maryland DC QSO party is going to be on, so check that out. Kentucky State Park's on the air. Also, the 50 megahertz fall sprint, the NCCC 55th anniversary fiesta, and the SARL HF digital contest, as well as the Forest States QRP second Sunday sprint. As always, the K1U SN SSTs, the MSTs, and the CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar and events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. All right, well, let's wrap this thing up with some interesting online radio content. Got a whole bunch for you today. Let's start it off with Josh KI6NAZ, who shows a new firmware for the VGC and BTEC radios to work satellites. It seems to make it a whole lot easier. I'm looking forward to checking this one out myself. Veritasium explores the history and the electrochemistry of lithium-ion battery technology. This is a very interesting one, worth checking out. Hayden VK7HH talks about the difficulties finding Alinco radios. Mike K8MRD takes a look at compact and inexpensive 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. Matt M0DQW takes a look at the Discovery dish for satellite reception. This thing looks pretty cool. Chuck KK7USY makes a DIY mobile antenna mount for his truck. Ramon EA5IW takes us along for some beach portable CW. Looks like a whole lot of fun. Column M0MCX and Dave G0OES talk about 40-meter antennas. Kevin W1DED talks to Tim K3LR about the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation. Walt K4OGO talks about his favorite antenna experiment. Looks like a fun one. Kevin W1DED talks to Tom 8 Papa 5 Alpha, also W2SC, about station design and contesting in the Caribbean. Matt M0DQW takes a look at version 2 of the KV4PHT for Android phones. Colin MM0OPX talks about improving reception with SDRs. Kevin W1DED talks to Frank W3LPL and Roll K3RA about the best and worst radios for field day. L. Marie KJ5LXP experiments with some crossband repeating on VHF and UHF. Cyprian Y06DXE builds a simple FM receiver from minimal parts in 2 videos. Craig KM6LYW builds an off-grid packet radio digipeater complete with an AX25 setup and WinLink. Kevin KB9RLW reviews a new portable USB-powered soldering iron. Matt M0DQW reviews the RF Power Nanny web-enabled HF power meter. George VK2AOE amplifies his Hermes Lite 2 with a homebrewed amplifier. Hayden VK7HH builds a battery box for portable operations. Matt M0DQW takes a look at the ATS Decoder Mega SDR. Doug Bow, KD7DUG, shows how to get CW in sideband on a Quansheng HT. And Brian NR7Y shows how to make some mods with the Quansheng HT to do that without an adapter cable. Cyprian Y06DXE looks at the new TID Radio TD-H3 Plus HT. George VK2AOE builds his QRP playground. Great Scott Gadgets announces the Hack RF Pro SDR. And finally, Mike K8MRD uses a ladder as an antenna for POTA. Well, that is it for this week. Thanks, as always, for being with us. I've been Ed, November 2 Echo Charlie. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. Best 73, and we look forward to seeing you next week.